Alright, let's talk about Cartethyia, the newest arrow erosion hyper carry added to Wuthering Waves. And in this video, we're going to talk about her kit, teams, and rotation so that way you know everything that you need to know before you row. So let's go ahead and start with her kit, and she has three main mechanics: her forms, her Forte Bar, and her Resonance Liberation. So let's go ahead and break down her forms, with her first form being Cartethyia. So Cartethyia's main go is to quickly generate 3 swords on her Forte Bar and consume them to generate buffs for Fleur-de-Lis. So let's go ahead and break down how she's able to generate these swords. With the first sword being the Sword of Discord, which is the left sword, and it generates 2 stacks of arrow erosion, and this is generated using a heavy attack or intro. Next we have the Sword of Divinity, which is the middle sword, which generates 1 stack of arrow erosion, and this is activated by doing a basic 4 attack. And lastly, we have the Sword of Virtue, the right sword, which also inflicts 2 stacks of arrow erosion, and it starts a plunge, which is activated by casting your skill. Now, to consume all swords so that way you're ready for your Fleur-de-Lis form, you have to do a plunge attack. So you can see, if you activate the Sword of Virtue by casting your skill, you're going to start a plunge. So all you have to do is simply do a basic attack to consume all swords. Once you have accomplished this, you're ready to activate your Liberation to transform into Fleur-de-Lis. But again, you want to make sure that you consumed all the swords before going into Fleur-de-Lis. There's 2 ways to know this. 1, on her Forte Bar, the swords will have a swirling glow effect. And 2, once you transform into Fleur-de-Lis, you should have 3 swords on your back. So now let's talk about her second form, Fleur-de-Lis. So her main goal is to quickly fill up the Forte Bar so that way she can activate her Excalibur Liberation. So let's discuss how we fill up the Forte Bar. Pretty much every attack that Fleur-de-Lis does, her basic attack combos, her skills, etc. But each attack combo / skill reduces an arrow erosion stack. This is one of the main reasons why you want to make sure that you consume all the swords before going into this form to help compensate for this. Which brings us to her Liberation. If her Forte Bar is not filled, you're able to cast it to switch back to Cartethyia. But once it is filled, you're able to cast Excalibur, which does a lot of damage. On top of that, each stack of arrow erosion amplifies damage by 20% and stacks up to 5 times. So now let's say that you messed up in consuming the proper swords. You can switch back to Cartethyia, take a look at your Forte Bar and see which sword you're missing, cast the proper sword, do a plunge attack to consume all the swords, and then liberate back into Fleur-de-Lis. One interesting thing about her kit is that when you activate her Fleur-de-Lis form, you're able to walk on water. And lastly, when you outro, she's going to give a 17.5 arrow damage amp for her teammates for 20 seconds. So now let's talk about her rotation. So you want to intro into Cartethyia, you want to do 3 basic attacks, you want to activate her skill into a plunge attack, and then you want to activate her echo, and then you want to liberate into Fleur-de-Lis. Then you want to activate her skill for a second time, then you want a basic attack until her Forte Bar is maxed, and then cast her enhanced liberation activating Excalibur, and then you outro to the next resonator. So now let's go ahead and talk about her build. You mainly want to focus on crit rate and crit damage, and you want to try to get somewhere between 110 to 120 energy recharge. And for your secondary stat, you want to go for basic attack damage. Which brings us to her echoes, and the set that you want to use is Windward Pilgrimage, due to the fact that this set increases her arrow damage as well as increases her crit rate. You could use Gust to Welkin, but this is more of a support set, and it's probably better just to use on Ciaccona. Also, you want to use the 4-4-1-1-1 setup over the 4-3-3-1-1 setup. This is due to the fact that we get an extra 1 cost echo with HP, and she massively scales off of HP. So for your boss echo, you want to use Fleur-de-Lis due to the fact that it's going to give you an extra 20% arrow damage bonus. For your other 4 cost echo, you want to use Nightmare Kelpie, which is located here. And for the main stats, for the 4 cost echoes, you want to use crit rate or crit damage, to where you're mainly trying to aim for a 2-to-1 ratio. So this is mainly going to depend on your weapon and your echo substats. Also, don't forget to factor in the 10% crit rate that you get from Windward Pilgrimage. And for your 1 cost echoes, as mentioned earlier, you want to go with HP. Also, take advantage of your modifier so that way you can drastically reduce the time that you're going to be farming echoes. Which brings us to her weapons, and of course her signature weapon is amazing for her, to where this signature weapon is probably the biggest buff for any single character so far. This is due to the fact that this is a weapon that increases your HP, and there's not many weapons in the game currently that does that. But on top of that, it ignores the target's defense, and it increases the damage that that target takes. Her second best weapon is Camellia's, due to the fact that it's going to give her crit rate, and it's going to increase her basic attack damage. Even though she can't activate the second passive, this is still a good weapon for her. Her third best option is the standard weapon, to where it's more of a stat stick due to the fact that it's just going to give crit rate and some energy recharge. Under that, we have Changeley's weapon, to where it's going to give crit damage, and increase her skill damage. And under that would be Brandt's weapon due to the fact that it gives way too much energy recharge, but it does give a little crit rate and it does increase basic attack damage. And under that, really your only option is a craftable 3-star weapon, Guardian Sword, due to the fact that it does increase her HP, but the passive only increases skill damage. Which brings us to her skills. So you want to focus on leveling up her Forte, her Liberation, her normal attack, then her skill, and lastly, her intro. So now let's quickly take a look at her sequences. S1 spreads arrow erosion stacks easier and you gain some crit damage buffs. This is about a 14% damage increase. S2 increases her max stacks for arrow erosion, applies stacks faster, and increases a lot of her multipliers. This is a 40% damage buff. S3 allows her to apply more arrow erosion stacks and pretty much invalidates Ciaccona, but this is a 32% damage buff. S4 is a 20% attribute damage buff for the team, so a 14% damage buff. S5 is a cheat death ability, and S6 is an insane power increase to where it's like a 36% damage buff. Which brings us to her teams, to where she does have quite a few options who she can pair up with. So let's go ahead and take a look at her ideal sub DPS, and that would be Ciaccona. This is due to the fact that she can use the Gust of Welkin set, increasing Cartethia's arrow damage by 15%. On top of that, when she creates Sylph, she's going to further increase it by 24%. She also is going to apply multiple stacks of arrow erosion and amplify that arrow erosion damage. After that, we have Sanwa, mainly due to the fact that she can increase Cartethia's basic attack damage. And she can utilize the Moonlit set, activating Imperon's Heron, further increasing Cartethia's damage. And after that, your really only other option is Alto, who can increase her arrow damage. But when it comes to healers, actually Rover is your best choice, utilizing the Rejuvenating set with the Boss Echo Beam, Fallacy of No Return, and built like a sub DPS. You could also use Bellborn, but you might have to alter your rotation a bit to get the full effects. You can also use Windward Pilgrimage, greatly increasing your Rover's DPS. This is a decent option due to the fact that the Rejuvenating set's not really doing much for Cartethyia. On top of that, if you plan to use Tacit Fields to farm for Cartethyia, you can essentially farm for Rover as well. But the main reason why Rover is good is her outro, which increases the max stacks of arrow erosion that you can apply to a target. This one massively increases Cartethia's damage because now she's able to get the full effects of her Resonance Liberation by reaching the 5 stacks much easier. But your other choices in the healer slot would be Shorekeeper, due to the fact that it's just going to increase her crit and give her a damage amp, and the last option would be Verena, which just gives her a damage amp. Then one other possible team that you could use is Rover as a sub DPS using the Moonlit set. And for the healer, ideally you would use Shorekeeper, otherwise it's better just to pair Rover with Sanwa or Alto. So now let's go ahead and do a simple rotation using Ciaccona and Rover as teammates. So you want to start out by doing Rover's skill, do 3 basic attacks, and do a skill. And then you want to do 2 basic attacks and then cast her Liberation. Then activate her Echo, activate her Enhanced skill, and then you want to intro into Ciaccona. Do 2 basic attacks, jump cancel, do 3 basic attacks, activate her skill, her Forte, then her Echo, and then cast her Liberation. Then you want to intro into Cartethyia, do 3 basic attacks, activate her skill, do a plunge attack, activate her Echo, and then liberate into Fleur-de-Lis. Cast her skill again, then basic attack until her Forte is maxed, and then cast Excalibur. And then you outro into Rover, starting this rotation all over again. When it comes to the free-to-play team, I would use Sanwa and Rover as teammates. This is mainly due to the fact that Sanwa has a very short field time, increases that basic attack damage, and she can activate that Impermanence Heron, further increasing Cartethia's damage. So Cartethyia is a very strong character. So if you do plan to get her, there are a few recommendations that I would make. If you're going for sequences, I would get her signature first and then stop at S2 or S3. But do know that the more sequences that you do get, the less Ciaccona matters. And you don't necessarily have to have Ciaccona for Cartethyia, but she does make her stronger / easier to play. So with that, you should know everything that you need to know before you roll. So, are you rolling for Cartethyia? Are you waiting for some of those future characters? But other than that, I'll talk with you guys later.